What is your gender, ethnicity, and race?
Well, I'm and I'm Caucasian, right?
Mm-hmm. And a male.
And the male.
And when and where were you born?
I was born here in Akron, Ohio, in what the year?
Sure.
January 6th of 43.
And where did you live during the period of 1965 through 1971?
I lived in Brimfield,
Which is by Kent State, right?
Right close to Kent State.
Yeah. And what was the extent of your education at that point?
High school graduate.
And what was your occupation?
Rubber worker, Goodyear Tire and rubber worker.
And were you married at that time?
Yes.
Yes. And did you have any children?
Yes.
And their ages, if you remember?
Between 65 and
71.
Yeah, I had two. One it was both girls, and one was in 65, and the other was 69.
Gotcha. And what do you remember most about the period between 1965 and 1970?
Well, I think the 60s was a good era for working. The rubber companies, Akron was doing well in 65, 70s. And we made decent livings for families and stuff back in that time period. And what else did you want to?
Just anything you remember about the time period.
Oh, well, there's a lot going on, actually. The race riots, like you said, there was a lot of space things going on back then. Kent State had their sit downs and their problems in 71, I believe it was. Does that sound correct? Yeah. I don't know. I think it was actually a good place and time.
Better than it is now?
Possibly.
Mm-hmm. And what would you consider being your fondest memory of that 5-year period?
Well, buying a home, raising a couple of young children, having a decent job. I think people were actually closer together than they are now. You know, we used to do things, go places, and nobody was rich or real poor. So, it was on kind of level playing ground,
Made it easier for you guys to get along.
Yeah, I think so.
And what stood out to you as being the most troubling thing that you can recall about that period?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I really don't know. Troubling. Give me an example.
Like maybe like the race riots, like maybe during that period.
Yeah. Of course, that was troubling to everybody.
A lot of tension, maybe.
A lot of tension, yeah. I don't know.
Describe what it was like to be a young man during that time period.
Well, I think it was a good time to be a young man at that time. Like I said, we were making decent money. We were raising kids. Things were a lot cheaper. Your money went further. It wasn't so much of a hustle bustle, and I have this and you have that, and I'm this and you're that. And, yeah.
And this section talks a little bit more about the space program, focuses on it. When did you first recall hearing or knowing about the space program in NASA?
Probably the year of when we was trying to send people to the moon and spacewalks. and I don't exactly remember.
Right. That's okay.
This is probably in the mid to late '60s
Mm-hmm.
or something.
And do you recall anything about NASA's missions previous to the 1969 moon landing, like Apollo 8 or Apollo 10?
Just what I would read or hear on the TV or radio about.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And do you remember any of the events leading up to the July 1969 moon landing? Like, in other words, like, what do you call that was going on in the country at the time?
69.
69.
I'm sure I do, but I can't think of
Yeah,
what
okay.
would be.
Do you recall where you were when they landed on the moon? Like, when you heard about it?
Yeah, I think we on the news, and I can't remember if that was on television or not. But yeah, we were kind of all grouped around even when that happened. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember most about it?
Well, that it was a big thing for that era.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Have you heard anything about like the conspiracies around it? Do you believe in them or?
Yeah, there was people that said that it never really happened. Maybe it was set up, like in a desert somewhere, and that we never really ever set foot on the moon. But I think they proved that wrong.
And I think it was on TV. So you did say you were watching it on TV. Do you remember who the astronauts were?
I should, but I can't. I can't tell you.
Buzz Aldrin.
But yeah,
And Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong.
And he was from Ohio, wasn't he?
Yeah, one of them was from Ohio. Yeah.
And what was your feelings about it? Like, what did it mean to you personally?
Well, personally, I was never much into that, but I think it was a big thing that we decided to push ahead of the Russian program. We did that first, let's say. Yeah.
I think that's probably why there's a lot of conspiracies that they wanted to say that they got there before the Russians.
Right.
So I think that's why there may be some conspiracies about it.
Mm-hmm.
And were you aware that friends, family, or coworkers were talking about the moon landing? Like, what kinds of things were you hearing about it? Like, what were they saying about it? Like, were they impressed? Were they?
Well, yes, and like I said, some would say they don't know if that was really staged someplace or
And what was your reaction when you first saw the picture of the Earth taken from the moon?
Well, I was excited about it. Yeah.
And what were your feelings about the space program when the crew from Apollo 11 returned to Earth? Did you feel any different when they made it back safely? Or?
Well, yeah, I thought it was a nice thing that happened, yes.
And do you recall any other moon landings? Even after?
I do, but I don't know the names of them right offhand.
And in your mind, what was significant about the country landing on the moon? About the United States? Dealing with the Russians again, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And how they beat the Russians out.
Yeah.
And in your mind, did a human landing on the moon change the way you saw society? Or Earth itself? Or the universe?
Well, it's something they did that I didn't think would ever be possible. If that makes sense.
Right. Shocking. A little bit surprising. Why was the landing a big deal to you? Or why do you think it was a big deal to people?
Just I think the people didn't really think it could actually happen.
Right.
That's basically what I think.
And what else was going on during that time that might have made the moon landing less important? Like maybe other distractions in the country.
What years are we talking about?
Around 1970-ish.
1970s.
Was there a war going on?
Yeah, the Vietnam War was going on, but it was going on before that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that was another distraction. if you want to call it that. I don't understand what the big thing about the space program is, though. Is there a reason that you're asking all the questions about the space programs or whatever?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just to see what people remember.
Okay.
And
the Vietnam War was going on. It went on for several years.
Mm-hmm. And the last question is, why do you think the U.S. stopped sending people to the moon?
Well, geez, I don't really know.
Mm-hmm. You think it could be like money related, maybe?
Well, that could be, yes, that could be. But don't they have their space labs up there now?
Mm-hmm.
And
right. Really no need for it if they're already up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I appreciate
That's it?
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Sure.